Okay, so today we're changing things up. If you guys have seen any of the previous videos, for the last couple months, I have been shooting this Elite Omnia. I haven't really made a video about it, but wanted to kind of go over it today with some of the stuff because it's kind of undertaking a little bit of a change. Right now, it's set up for like 3D target shooting, shot the Iowa Deer Classic with it. I've been really kind of like shooting, touching some stuff out distance with it, but going up for a little bit of a change. We're gonna tune it to a new arrow system, and we're also gonna play around with the stabilizers. I'm assuming that we're gonna also need to mess with the set technology that's on here because of the arrows. So it's set up for a different diameter arrow, different spine arrow, different weight arrow, and obviously that's gonna change quite a bit of stuff with how that bow reads through paper. So we're just kind of gonna mess around with it. The set system from the tuning that I've done on the bow is awesome. It's really similar to like the Bowtech's, that cam adjustment system. It's the same premise as like top hats, shim systems, anything like that. You can just do it on the fly, super easy. But really, first things first, we're gonna get started on the stabilizers. So I'm gonna take these bars off here. The main thing that I'm gonna be changing up, so if you look at the bow, really similar to like what the Hoyts have, they have that top stabilizer point. That's what I normally run my stabilizers off of, just because it's what I'm used to. And then they have that lower stabilizer point right there. I've never ran a bar off of that, but really similar to the Hoyts, the Elites come with this little dampening stabilizer. I take it off right out of the box, but it's a little nubbin. So what I'm gonna do with that today is throw it on down at the bottom, and basically that's gonna be the only front bar that I run. This is gonna be set up for like close quarters, whitetail hunting, like really maneuverable, pretty lightweight, not gonna have really long bars, really heavy bars, anything like that. But one thing that I am gonna do here is take the quick disconnect off, because even though it's not a really long bar, and I'm not trying to get really long bars on the setup, I definitely do still want a little bit of extra length on these bars. So I'm gonna throw the quick disconnect onto this mounting bracket, and then gonna throw that little nubbin stabilizer there onto the bow, just so you have a little bit of extra distance. All right, there we go. Now we'll go ahead, take the quick disconnect off of my other front bar that I had, and we'll throw that onto this little guy here. Now the concept behind these lower mounting bars is pretty smart. I didn't really buy into it for a whole lot until this year, where I kind of did some thinking on it, but you're effectively, if you look at it, that stabilizer there is coming out to the point that like a 4-inch stabilizer would be normally on a bow. Now granted, that's a short stabilizer still, but you're getting a little bit of extra length, a little bit of stabilization, and you're also putting it at a lower center of gravity. So like this quick disconnect in and of itself is a 10-degree down. I run that most of the time anyways, but you're able to run less weight, lower down, and get relatively the same effect as you would with like a 6 or 8-inch bar, at least in theory. I don't completely know, I'm not fully bought in, like I said, so we're gonna find out. I'll do some tinkering with this setup. As far as the back bar goes, now normally if you have a pretty short stabilizer setup like this, in the front, you don't really run a back bar. I still wanna add a little bit of weight, and especially since I have a sight out front here that reaches out a good distance, I am gonna add a back bar. So this here is the CBE Effect stabilizer. Just a little 6-inch stabilizer. This is like the in-house brand for Elite, so like Fuse for Hoyt or anything like that, for any other brands that have it. But gonna throw this guy on here, and then I am gonna set it so it runs back just a little bit. So there we go. It's pretty flush with the bow. It's in pretty tight, so not really going to have too much weight kicking out to the side. I might change that later, running it with the sight, running it with the quiver on there, kind of just seeing how it balances. But that looks pretty good to me. It looks pretty interesting. I might throw some weight onto the front, take some weight off the back, and kind of mess around with it. But yeah, that's gonna be the stabilizer setup on this guy for the hunting side of things. Now on the sight itself, this is the CBE Engage 3-pin. I ran the sight for about a year and a half now on 2 different bows. I really like it. On target season, I run it out quite a bit, but for this hunting setup, I'm gonna go ahead and move it in. So, little tip, I always Sharpie up my sights. Really anything on the bow, I Sharpie up my cam timing, my rests, anything, the quick disconnects on there, just so you know that you're matching it up with the same point every single time. That's really important because if anything moves, you're able to just double check, reference it, and see what is moving. Especially if you don't have access to a shop. Let's say you're out hunting and you bump something. It's really important being able to know, like, hey, my sight's off by this much. Let me just move it back to that Sharpie mark instead of needing to waste, a couple hours trying to figure out what's wrong with your bow and then do some like last minute on the whim tinkering. So already that bow is a lot more compact. It's gonna have relatively the same amount of weight. You aren't really changing a whole lot on the sight. It's obviously still the same sight, still the same weight. The stabilizers though is where you're gonna be shaving a little bit of that weight there. And it's a lower center of gravity. So we'll see if it doesn't feel too top heavy, we'll be good to go from there. As far as the arrows that I'm running, still sticking with the same shafts as last year. These are the Easton Axis shafts, so they're 5mm, very popular. I don't need to introduce them. I'm gonna stick with 50 grains up front and 100 grains on the point. I did cut them down a little bit shorter, and I'm messing around with the vein configuration. So right now I have a 3-fletch of the Boning Heat vein. I'm messing around with AAEs again, a couple other boning veins, and then also tack veins. I ran the driver vein last year just in a 3-fletch. That was like the 2 3/4. So I'm thinking of making a little bit shorter vein because these arrows are just gonna be slinging mechanicals. Anything that's gonna be shooting a fixed blade, I'm gonna shoot out of my other bow. So we'll see how this runs through paper. I'm thinking we're gonna need to change up some stuff on it, and then we'll just kind of go from there. This is one of those arrows that has a different vein on it. I'm shooting the AAE Max out of this one. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's gonna be 3-fletch, should be 3 tears. And I don't think the steering is really gonna matter too much with the tune of the arrow right here. So we'll see what's rolling. All right, so not super bad. Looks like we got just a little tail left. Let's go ahead and change that real quick. Like I was talking about, one of the great things that I like about this guy here on the Omnia is that it has this set technology. So if you take a look here, it's got a couple different locking screws. That is basically the screw that locks it in place. And then those screws right there are the drivers. So it has basically a tune chart right there. So if you're shooting tail left, you rotate it counterclockwise. So we're gonna go ahead, get this guy in here, and I'll break that loose. And then we're just gonna go ahead and rotate this counterclockwise, and then we'll lock this guy back up, put an arrow through it, and see if it fixes it. I definitely say it's important to note that that set technology is really kind of is really going to be an aid to not get out of center shot. I would not use that if your rest is not in center shot, but I have this guy all set up properly on the vertical, horizontal. It's good to go. So once you're in center shot, once your bow is in spec, if you're still getting a tear for some reason, if there's just something wrong with the limbs, anything like that, or just with the timing of the bow, then that's when you use that sec technology, is to get that tear out of it. All right, so let's put this through paper and see how this one fares. That's a lot worse. There we go. After a little bit of looking and seeing exactly how to adjust it, that is the final tear. Obviously tuning can be kind of fidgety. So that was our first one right there, I believe, and then the adjustment went through. We had a couple little hiccups, but we ended up going through on those last two ones. That one was a little outside, but that one is pretty much money. So I'm gonna roll with that. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's the little overview on the Elite Omnia. About 5-6 months into shooting it, I absolutely love it. The switch up from brands, the switch up from the technology, I'm a big fan of it. It is a absolutely great daily driver of a bow. The adjustability on it, so right now I still have it set to that 75% let off, but you can adjust it all the way up to 90% let off. I have the smooth mods in, but closer to hunting season, if I want to, I can always throw those aggressive mods in, get a couple extra feet per second out of there. But it just feels really, really nice to shoot. It's a really good shooting bow, really solid. I would definitely recommend checking it out. But yeah, that's the hunting setup. That's really what this is probably gonna look like going into the 23 season. So I'm gonna be pulling this thing out west and getting rolling with it. That's really just the short and sweet. I'm not gonna get down to brass tacks. There's definitely gonna be a little bit more tinker and stuff coming with this bow in the next couple videos here. And we'll just kind of see what we got rolling. So I'm gonna throw a different arrow setup through this. I have a little bit of a long range video that I'm gonna be shooting, so not gonna be running my hunting arrows out of here for too much longer. I'm gonna set them up for that long distance arrow and then set them back up for my hunting arrow. So stay tuned for that one. It's gonna be a fun one. Gonna be some pretty long distance. Other than that, if you guys like the video, make sure you like the video. If you guys like the content, make sure you stick around, check out some of the other videos I have on the channel. And yeah, keep looking forward to other ones. So we'll see you guys.